You are standing in a bamboo forest. The air is thick and green. Something massive is sitting about 10 feet away from you. It weighs over 200 pounds. It is covered in black and white fur. It is eating. Just sitting there, completely calm. Chewing through a stalk of bamboo like it has nowhere to be and nothing to worry about. And your brain does something weird. It doesn't say danger. It doesn't say run. It says cute. You want to hug it. You want to take a picture of it. You might even want to name it. But here's the question nobody ever seems to ask. Why don't you want to eat it? Think about that for a second. Humans have eaten almost every large animal that ever walked this earth. Mammoths, aurochs, giant sloths, cave bears. If it had meat on its bones, at some point in history, a human being looked at it and thought, food. But not the panda. The panda sits there, fat, slow, enormous, basically a walking meal, and the entire human species just decided to protect it instead. We spend millions of dollars every year keeping pandas alive. We have dedicated research centers, international treaties. We fly pandas between countries on specially chartered flights with veterinary escorts. And yet nobody ever stops and asks the obvious question. Why? Why did this one animal get a free pass? The answer is not what you think. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand something unsettling about the way your own brain decides what is food and what is not. Because the story of why we don't eat pandas is actually the story of how your mind was hijacked. Stay until the end. The last part will genuinely change how you look at every meal you have ever eaten. Let's start with what pandas actually are, because most people have the wrong picture entirely. When you think panda, you think slow, you think peaceful, you think bamboo, and all of that is true. But here is what is also true. A giant panda is a bear, not a distant cousin of a bear, not a bear-like creature, an actual bear, Ursidae. Same family as the grizzly, same family as the polar bear, same family as the American black bear, which hunters actively pursue for its meat. Its jaw can crush bone, its paws can tear apart tree trunks, it has the body of an apex predator, and it is sitting in a forest eating grass. That is already strange, but it gets stranger. About 10,000 years ago, the world looked very different. Humans were hunters. Every large animal on every continent was a potential target. In North America, humans hunted the mammoth to extinction. In Australia, the giant wombat. In Madagascar, elephant birds the size of a car. Wherever early humans went, large animals started disappearing. Paleontologists call this the Pleistocene megafauna extinction. The pattern is unmistakable. Humans arrive. Large animals vanish. And yet, in the fossil record of China, where pandas have lived alongside humans for hundreds of thousands of years, there is almost no evidence of humans systematically hunting giant pandas. No panda bone piles, no panda kill sites, no evidence of panda being a regular part of the ancient human diet, which is scientifically strange, because pandas were absolutely there, and humans were absolutely hungry. So what happened? Here's the first layer of the answer, and it is purely biological. Pandas are almost useless as food. Not because they are small, they are not small. And not because they are dangerous. They are bears, so yes, technically dangerous, but humans have hunted far more dangerous things. The problem is what is inside them. A giant panda is mostly water and fiber. Because bamboo is mostly water and fiber. Bamboo is one of the worst possible foods for a large mammal to survive on. It has almost no fat, almost no protein, almost no digestible nutrition. To get enough calories from bamboo to survive, a panda has to eat for up to 14 hours a day. Every single day. It eats between 20 and 40 pounds of bamboo just to keep itself alive, and its body barely extracts anything useful from it. Researchers studying panda digestion found that a panda absorbs only about 17% of the nutrition in the bamboo it consumes. The rest passes straight through. So when you look at a giant panda, what you are looking at is a 200-pound animal that is almost entirely bamboo, no fat reserves worth speaking of. Minimal muscle protein in comparison to its size. A body that has spent millions of years optimizing itself to process one of the most nutritionally empty plants on Earth. Ancient hunters operating on pure caloric logic would have quickly learned that a panda is a terrible return on investment. You risk your life to take down a 200-pound bear. You cook it, and you get the caloric equivalent of a mediocre meal. Meanwhile, a deer gives you more fat, more protein, and runs away instead of fighting back. The economics of survival made the panda a low-priority target, but that is only part of the story. Because that explanation covers ancient humans. It does not explain why a modern person with a grocery store and a food science laboratory looks at a panda and feels something closer to love than hunger. Something else is happening, and it is happening inside your brain. Right now, without your permission. In 1943, a man named Konrad Lorenz published a paper that would quietly change how we understand human perception. Lorenz was an Austrian zoologist. He had spent years studying animal behavior. And he noticed something that nobody had formally described before. He noticed that humans respond to certain physical features in a very specific, very automatic way. Big eyes relative to the face. Large forehead relative to the rest of the skull. Small nose. Round cheeks. Chubby, shortened limbs. When a human sees these features, something in the brain activates immediately. Something old. Something involuntary. Lorenz called this combination of features Kindchenschema. In English, baby schema. The idea was that humans evolved to find these features irresistible because they are the features of human infants. A baby's head is enormous relative to its body. Its eyes are enormous relative to its face. Its movements are uncoordinated and soft. And when a parent sees these features, the brain does not ask permission before responding. It floods with warmth, with protectiveness, with the overwhelming urge to nurture. This is not a choice. It is a survival mechanism so ancient and so deep that it runs beneath conscious thought. And here is the problem. The problem, or depending on how you look at it, the accident. The panda is basically a giant baby. Giant dark circles around the eyes, making the eyes look enormous. Round, flat face. Compact, chubby body. Slow, waddling movements that look almost uncoordinated. It did not evolve these features to manipulate humans. It evolved them for completely unrelated biological reasons. But the human brain does not know that. The human brain runs its infant detection software. It scans the panda. It sees the eye circles. It sees the round face. It sees the clumsy waddle. And it outputs one word. Protect. Not eat, protect. Lorenz identified this pattern in the 1940s, but the science confirming how powerful it is came later. In 2009, researchers at the University of Vienna ran a study where they showed participants images of animals with varying degrees of baby-like features. The more an animal's face matched the baby schema, the more participants rated it as cute. And the stronger the cute response, the more protective the participants felt toward the animal, and the less willing they were to harm it. The panda scored at the extreme end, across cultures, across ages. The effect was not subtle. It was overwhelming. But here is where this gets genuinely unsettling. The researchers also found that the baby schema response changes your perception of intelligence. When a face triggers the cute response, you automatically assume it is more innocent, more helpless, more like a child, and things that feel like children are things we are biologically forbidden from harming. The panda has essentially pickpocketed one of your deepest evolutionary protections, the one designed to keep you from hurting babies. And it did it entirely by accident. So the real answer to why we don't eat pandas is not a cultural rule. It is not an ethical decision that humans sat down and made. It is a glitch. A beautiful, accidental glitch in the oldest software your brain is running. But wait, because there is another layer underneath this, and it is the one that connects pandas to something much bigger. Something that explains not just the panda, but almost everything about what humans decide to eat. Think about what you had for dinner last night. Or what you would never eat. Most people in the Western world would never eat a dog. In South Korea, dog meat has historically been consumed and is still eaten in some communities today, though it is increasingly rare. In France, horse meat is sold openly in specialty butcher shops. Most Americans find the idea of eating a horse deeply uncomfortable. In Cambodia, fried tarantulas are a street food snack. In Japan, raw fish on rice is considered a refined, beautiful meal. None of these differences come from nutrition. A dog has meat, a horse has meat, a tarantula has protein. The difference is purely mental. It is a category. Anthropologists call it the omnivore's paradox. Humans can eat almost anything. And yet in every culture, every society, every family, certain things are placed in a category called not food. Once something is in the not food category, it triggers disgust. Not just preference, disgust. A physical, involuntary reaction. Your body recoils. Your face makes an expression you did not choose to make. Your stomach does something uncomfortable. And that reaction feels like biology. It feels like your body warning you. But it is almost never biology. In the 1980s, psychologist Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania spent years studying what makes humans feel disgust toward food. And he found something that should make you feel strange about every food choice you have ever made. Rozin discovered that disgust toward food is almost entirely learned. Children under about 2 years old will eat almost anything. They have no food disgust. They will pick up a dead insect and eat it. They will eat mud. They will eat things adults find completely revolting. The disgust response around food is not innate. It is installed. Sometime between ages 2 and 8, a child watches the people around them. They watch what those people eat. They watch what those people refuse. They watch the faces those people make. And silently, invisibly, the categories are installed. Food, not food. And once the category is installed, it feels ancient. It feels natural. It feels like it was always there, but it was taught. And here is where this loops back to pandas. The panda occupies a very specific category in modern culture. It is not just cute. It is not just protected. It has been placed deliberately and strategically into one of the most powerful not food categories a society can create, the celebrity category. Think about when you first learned what a panda was. You probably saw one in a cartoon, or a picture book, or a nature documentary with soft music. The panda was not introduced to you as an animal. It was introduced to you as a character. It had a face you recognized, round and expressive and innocent. It was doing something gentle, eating bamboo, sitting in the sun, rolling around. By the time you were old enough to even form the concept of eating it, you had already spent years relating to it as something with a personality, something with a story, something almost like a person, and we do not eat people. This is not an accident of panda conservation. It is the result of decades of deliberate image management. China, which controls all the world's giant pandas, has used the panda as a tool of what political scientists call panda diplomacy since the 1950s. When China wants to build goodwill with a country, it loans them a panda. Just one. And the entire nation falls in love with it. The panda gets a name. It gets live camera streams. It gets international news coverage when it gives birth. It gets viral videos, and every person who watches those videos runs the same brain software. Baby schema activates. Protective instinct floods the system. The panda is moved one category deeper into not food, into family, into beloved, into something you would feel genuine grief over losing. The Chinese government understood, intuitively or deliberately, that you do not protect an animal by making laws. You protect it by making people fall in love with it, and you make people fall in love with it by feeding it into the oldest, most powerful circuit in the human brain. The one that says, protect the helpless. It worked. Panda populations, which had dropped to just over 1,000 animals in the wild by the 1970s, have since recovered enough that in 2016, the International Union for Conservation of Nature downgraded the giant panda from endangered to vulnerable. That is an extraordinary conservation success story. Driven not primarily by habitat preservation, not primarily by anti-poaching laws, but by making billions of people incapable of imagining eating one. But here is the part that should sit with you a little uncomfortably. Because the panda story is not just about pandas, it is about you, and how your food choices were made for you, before you were old enough to make them yourself. Think about the animals you eat without a second thought. A chicken, a pig, a cow. Now think about what you know about how intelligent those animals are. Pigs have been tested at cognitive levels comparable to dogs. Some studies suggest they perform on par with chimpanzees on certain problem-solving tasks. A pig can recognize itself in a mirror. It can learn its name. It can play video games using a joystick, a task researchers at Purdue University demonstrated in 2021. Cows form deep social bonds. They have best friends. Studies from the University of Northampton found that cows experience measurable stress when separated from their bonded companions. And yet, bacon, pulled pork, burgers, no disgust, no baby schema activation, no protective instinct, because the cow and the pig were placed in the food category before you were old enough to have an opinion, and the panda was placed in the not food category. And both of those placements feel completely natural to you now. Both of them feel like obvious facts about the world, but they were installed by your culture, by your media, by the images you were shown before you were old enough to question them. The panda did not earn its protection by being more intelligent than a pig. It earned it by accident, by having the right face, by being the right level of rare, by being picked up by the right political machine at the right moment in history, and by sliding perfectly into the gap in your brain that was designed for something else entirely. Now here is the final layer, and this is the one that changes things. Every time you feel disgust at the idea of eating something, that feeling is real. It is not fake. It is not something you are performing. It is a genuine, physical, involuntary response. But the thing that triggered it was chosen for you. The categories were drawn for you. The lines between food and not food, between cute and edible, between beloved and livestock, those lines were drawn by other people, by cultures you were born into, by media you were too young to evaluate critically, by the faces of animals you were introduced to through stories designed to make you love them. You did not draw those lines. You inherited them. And they feel so deep, so real, so fundamental that they are almost impossible to question. Almost. Because you just spent the last few minutes questioning them. You just looked at a panda and traced the invisible wires that run from its round face to the oldest protection circuit in your brain. You just watched how a government used those wires, how a media ecosystem used them, how your own childhood absorbed them before you even knew what a category was. And that means something. It means the lines can be redrawn, not for pandas specifically. The panda's story is largely a good one. A species that might have gone extinct is still here. But for everything else, for every choice you make without knowing why you make it, for every refusal that feels like instinct but was actually installed, for every category that feels like biology but was actually taught, the panda sat in a bamboo forest. It had the right face at the right moment in history, and billions of human brains, running ancient software designed for something else entirely, looked at it and felt love. You never had a chance to make a different choice. But knowing that, knowing how it happened, knowing that the most powerful food rule in your life was written by a cartoon, a diplomatic loan, and an accidental resemblance to a human baby. That is the first step toward actually choosing for yourself. The panda didn't change. You did. And the only question left is what you are going to do with that.